We'd like to acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Ktunaxa, Syilx, and Sinixt peoples and is home to Métis and many diverse Aboriginal persons. We honor their connection to the land and rivers and respect the importance of the environment to us as a community. All right. So there's going to be a presentation by Victim Services. Are they ready or?
Are those not excellent oranges?
They really are.
They really are.
Oh, California.
So they should be 25% better.
Don't choke on it. Oh, here they are. Welcome.
How are you?
Good afternoon. All right, my name is Gina. I'm just going to hand these out to Lena Portal. Yeah, okay, awesome. Yes. Thank you. Jane? Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. Devin?
Thank you.
Jason.
Thank you.
Matt? Eric? Yeah. Christine? Yeah, awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a big package of material to go through that Gina's put together. My name is Nina Hamilton. This is my coworker, Mark Vincent, and the newest member of our place-based victim services program, Gina Thompson. What we wanted to present to you today is that we have put together a comprehensive break and enter program over the past about year and a half. It has taken to come to fruition, and it's to enhance the safety and security of our local businesses, our residential areas and vehicles. And the initiative was approved by our former inspector, Chris Rice, and it focuses on providing immediate support and resources to victims of break-ins and thefts.
Okay. Well, I just thought I'd go over a little bit about how it happened and why it happened, and then Gina's going to go through what she and Silk are currently doing right now. So we thought there was a little bit of a gap maybe that we noticed some break and enter files that had come in and they didn't really get referred to us at Victim Services. So originally the plan was to give Gina this project to prepare as a newest member to prepare a comprehensive program for Nelson Police Department. And then Nina and I quickly realized it was a huge project. So we stepped up our game. And yeah, so as Nina said, we put together a bit of an outline and had it approved by past inspector Chris Rice. He approved that in principle. And then from there, we looked all over Canada for materials, and that's on theft and break-ins to residences, to businesses, and then theft from vehicles. And Gina worked exclusively on residences, residential break-in enters. Nina worked on theft from vehicles, and I worked on the business end of things. It was such a large project. So what we ultimately ended up with is the package that you have in front of you today. Gina took the crime prevention through environmental design training. I already had that crime prevention through environmental design. And our plan was that we would offer services. So that's an additional piece that we have. Chief Fisher approved us to, well, actually, pardon me, that wasn't, it was Deputy Chief Saney that approved us to have direct access to break-in enter files from Prime, the data system. And that was a bit of a stumbling block for us because we weren't able to access those files in the first instance unless the members referred us. So then we got access to be able to look through Prime and gain access to break-in enters like residences from vehicles or businesses. And then we prepared information packages for each one. So if anything comes across the Prime system, the members don't have to refer it. We can go directly to preparing a package for the victims and specific to the residents. They'll get a package, but they'll also get a letter that goes along with it, introducing ourselves, and then offering as well a direct referral to victim services, and that will actually go and walk with them through their homes, right? And maybe suggest ways that maybe they could improve their safety. So we haven't had anyone take us up on that, but we only, we sent it out to Chief Fisher in the fall and he approved it. So now the program is up and running. So that's where we're at. It's been a long process, but the big piece of it that's going on right now is specific to businesses. So Gina, I'll turn over to you and you want to introduce yourself a little bit more and what
Sure.
extensive training you've had and then what you get in Silker up to.
So my name is Gina Thompson. I've got a lot of background through social work mainly is what I've taken. So Selkirk and Castlegar is where I took my training. I've worked at the Transition House. I've worked with Mountain Lakes seniors. So Silk and I, the community safety officer, have been hand delivering these packages to all the local businesses. So there's just information for them about better securing the premises. There's information about who will come pick up hazards, if there's any sharps. There's information about, ECs, things of that nature, who will come pick up that stuff. So there's a non-emergency contact card that you guys have there. It's all included in the package of who does what. So the contact card is there with all those numbers that are in the package as well. And then for the ones that come up in Prime, we've got the letter cover that we type in the person's name that has had a break-in at their house or vehicle, and we send that to them in the mail, or I can hand deliver that as well.
Yeah, so one of the things that Gina did, so she and Silka have gone to over 300 businesses already in Nelson, but they're like any tiny little business, they're providing this exact same package you have, but specific to businesses. And the great thing that Gina and Silka have been working on is that if there's anything that comes up, like there's been a couple questions, right? One that was around vandalism and painting. So Gina worked with bylaw and with the business owner to make sure that there was that better conduit of information back and forth around expectations, around tickets. And then just even last week, there was a shopkeeper that called in and was experiencing some problems around people, smoking and using incense after hours with the homeless population. So Gina worked with the fire department to make sure that there was signage that went up there and for their knowledge too. And so those are some of the things that are ongoing right now. So how many more do you have to do besides, you've done about 300, but how many more packages?
I don't know. I just ordered another 100 envelopes. It's like a master list. I don't know. There's not much on there.
It's an extensive
Yeah.
list of local businesses here.
Forever growing.
And so they're pounding the pavement, both of them together as they can. We have Gina for 2 days a week, so when she and Silk are able to set some time aside in the afternoon together, they'll head out for a few hours and start to make their deliveries for businesses. Equally as important as Barb mentioned through Prime, how we're able to proactively search for thefts, break-and enters, vehicles, and then send out that information through the mail or contact those individuals accordingly and provide them practical guidance and emotional support as well. So we just wanted to make sure that everybody receives prompt assistance with any of these crimes and that there is support available. It can come through the mail, it can come through the phone, it can come in person, as well as we have this information uploaded to our victim services section on the MPD website as well.
So how does Prime work? Like you get an alert when there is, you do. You don't have to go in and check.
No, Andrew can set that up for us. And then we currently get it, like if there's a victim or a witness on the file, we'll get, we have a ROQ for that already. And this was specific to the break-in program. Because those are just something that, I remember back in the day, years ago, I was a police officer and I was stationed in Oliver, but I was living on a rural property and someone tried to break in my house when I was sleeping after a night shift. And I remember how victimized I was from that. And yet until that's happened to you, you don't really realize how victimized you feel. And that was kind of the thought when the three of us were talking, like, the officer just like, oh, it's another break-in, right? I mean, they're not like that, but it is a
Yeah.
little that way. As doing it myself for years, that's how I was a little bit until it happened. So that's what we thought we could fill in a little bit of that gap and then provide that. And then we thought that's why Gina and I have the training as well. So we're kind of ready to respond as needed.
We've tried to take that into account as well, developing the materials.
Well, I've been broken into, and I know you feel it's a sense of violation. You kind of wonder who was in here, and the drawers open, and the clothes everywhere, and that feeling
Yeah.
that you feel violated.
And the last thing you want to do is say, I need victim services, because you won't. You'll just say no. But if you get a package that comes from Gina or Nina that says, this is what maybe you've experienced and we can help you with things, and we could even come and help you do, we could come and help you with your property, like check the sliders on your windows or check the shrubs or make sure you have proper signage or recommend where best to put cameras. So, yeah, and that's all, it's free of charge. It's easy. It's not something that we're going to make onerous or publish in the paper. It's just very low key, and we'll come and help. That's why we thought it might work well coming from our service rather.
Great.
Anyone else have any? So,
Yeah, I just had a question. So you sent out like all 3 bits of 300 packages of all, no,
specific
you've just
to-
done
Yeah.
this one.
Yeah, so like businesses will get that
Okay.
one. If somebody has a car break-in, then we'll send them
Okay.
usually the vehicle one. And then the residential for the.
So far you sort of, like between these 3 kinds of packages, you've done 300 different
For
ones.
business,
Yeah.
for the
Okay.
We should tell you a little bit that one thing I think the 3 of us kind of neglected to mention, once we did all that extensive, exhaustive looking around at what was out there, and then, looking at insurance corporations and different police forces federally, then we prepared all the package and we sent it out for peer review. So internally, Dan Markovich and Sean Zukowski poured through it and gave us guidance on what they thought. And then externally, we went to the Chamber of Commerce. We were at Anchors, Public Works, Fire Department, and also Public Outreach. And what Gina alluded to there, one of the things that I know that she's found is that people didn't realize that if there's in the back alley behind their property, if someone has, unfortunately defecated, which is happening quite a bit, they can call Public Works and have them come right away and clean it up. And for sharps, Anchors will come, and so will the fire department. They'll come right away to pick up any of those. So that's why that contact list, and that was actually Tom Thompson on Nina's suggestion, going to Tom at the Chamber of Commerce. He said, let's do it. Why don't you do a contact card? So then Shiloh and Gina worked at getting that done through Hall Printing, and people, Gina said they've been really, really
People really want these. I mean, I've been asked many times for a contact
Mhm.
card,
Yeah,
so.
yeah, so that's kind of some of the work we've done.
And then the staff can just have that.
Yeah, it's just underneath, it's right there at the till,
Yeah.
like that's right there. Yeah,
Which is kind of neat because no one's seen places to put them up.
yeah.
And a question from Jane.
Yeah, so I'm gonna preface this so I don't sound like the insensitive person that you were referring to before, by saying that I bike commuted in Toronto. I had a bike a year stolen, and I live in really close to downtown in lower uphill. So I'm not unfamiliar with having things taken from my car, et cetera, that kind of stuff, like just change at this point. But I know you have a very small group. You work with 2 police forces. You do a lot of work, and there are what I would consider more serious crimes going on. Has any of this been at the expense of, supporting victims who have, been seriously injured, like, do you know what I mean? You know what I'm trying to say? I'm not trying to say that this doesn't matter. I think it does. I just would want to always make sure that that stuff hasn't fallen by the wayside.
No, and actually that is secondary to our primary role as supporting victims and witnesses. And there'll be days that Gina will come in and we'll say, you know what, you and Sil can't deliver today because there's too much other work that needs to be done. And then that just gets put on the wayside. But this was a way for, Gina to make connections too in the community and get out. So we really viewed it as great for the community, but also for Gina to really get to know the community really well in that regard, but never, 100% never at the expense of victims and witnesses to crime and trauma. In fact, Nina was away in Mexico last week. Oh my God, it almost killed Gina and I. Well, we only each work 2 days a week and I had to put in like full-time hours last week. Right. Yeah, no, absolutely, I hear you 100%, and we would never.
Yeah.
No, because that's where our needs to be. But this is important too, so we want to make it an additional thing. And we have, at your next meeting, so we don't want to burn up all your time today, we have another project that we worked on too, but we'll talk about it at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah, Christine.
Yeah, just a quick question, like, this looks great. And so is it available proactively in addition to when someone is actually a victim? So when you talked about the website, like, would this be on the website available to anyone who wants to access? Okay, thank
Every
you.
piece of that is on the website.
Okay, thank you.
And the business owners are getting the actual documents, but the
Yes.
residences and people who might experience a theft from vehicle will not. That'll just be if something happens. So unfortunately, that's reactive.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. Thank you.
Anything else?
No, this is awesome.
Thank you very much for coming.
I don't know if I'd have to ask permission to have you come, but I think it would be really good if I could have somebody on my staff reach out and have you come and do a workshop with council on this work.
Oh, well, Chief Fisher is pretty good at letting us have, he can function well in the gray area, so we're good to come.
Okay. I just never know what you would ask, because I mean, because the card and, but also, I mean, I love this. That'll just go on my dashboard now with my pink parking pass. And just, they can go both get going on the, like, I just sort of see so many practical uses for that, and I think that council would appreciate having like this full package, so kind of be here to do like 15 minutes or whatever, so I'll get someone to reach out so you can do one of our workshops at a meeting.
Yeah, truthfully, the more people that know about this, the better, right?
Yeah.
So that'd be wonderful. Thanks.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right. Item 3 on our agenda here, consent agenda. We have the meeting agenda, the minutes, and action list, and lots of correspondence and information. I'm assuming that everybody has had a chance to look at it, so we could have some motion to accept the consent agenda as presented. Christine, Jane, all in favor? Business arising, BCAPB resolution. Is that something that Janice was going to bring? Because we talked about it last week about.
Yes, we did, and I do have all the ones that we sent, that we have from the city, some of which would have been maybe applicable. I'm not too sure what it is that they talk about there. Like I was at our meeting. I didn't find the resolutions all that striking. I didn't go last year, but it was whether or not we wanted to do anything around.
I think we raised, I can't remember now what the issue was, but where they thought we should. Bail reform.
Bail
reform, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I think there is a committee that looks at all the resolutions, so we just have, if we want to put something forward, we just have to do it in a timely way. And then it's that committee that will review them and accept what's relevant, and we'll know about it. So for example, in your, I think it's in your package, there's a resolution from West Van.
No, we just got it as an email. It just came
That's an
yesterday.
Okay,
Yeah.
I read it in the email then, where they're talking about clarifying the language used when we send complaints, because there's some confusion between, for the community as to what comes to the department and what goes to OPCC, right? Like, and so to even just change the title so that it's clearer to the public is one example of a resolution it's already gone to the committee. So, yeah, so we need to just think about it, and if bail reform is something serious and you want them to consider it, we should just not worry about whether it's accepted or not. We should just send it in.
Okay, I will send, I got a couple
Okay.
that I think could go, so I'll just selectively pull out of the 20 that we debated the other day.
Yeah.
And
And
I'll
there's
send them to
like,
Shiloh and then she can.
yes,
circulate.
there is a format, right? Like, I mean, I'm not really.
Yeah, well,
Well,
there'll
resolutions are
be, there'll
written.
be an R resolution format that we would use for UBCM or AQBLG.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So hopefully they
That
would
should
meet
probably be
that,
okay.
whatever the
Yeah.
But I'll need it
criteria are.
before, I'll need your feedback before March 15th.
Right.
Yeah.
So, sorry, is one of the 20 that you were debating bail reform or?
I do believe bail reform
Okay.
was one of the ones.
Yeah.
It's just like, it was such a long, and I have to apologize, I'm not quite here today because I just flew back from Vancouver. I had like a whirlwind
Yeah.
round trip, so I'm,
Well, I'm glad you're here. Okay. All right, so that's good enough. We can move on. Chief's report.
Actually, I had a fair bit of stuff for the meeting. Sorry, I'm partly not here because I've just been sick the last 3 days, but I'm slowly getting better. In regards to the BC Association of Municipal Chiefs and Chiefs of Police, I was in Victoria last week for the triannual, I guess, in-person meetings. It was actually a pretty packed full week of meetings and presentations and discussions, and there was actually quite a bit of useful, sorry. Freudian slip. Sometimes it is useful, but actually this was one of the better meetings that I've been to. And unfortunately, there's a lot of it I probably just don't have time to update on the meeting today, but I'll try and maybe blend some of the highlights in over the next couple of meetings. One of the things that we talked about in several meetings leading up to this one was just issues around the GIBC and training of officers, the capacity of the GIBC, and the escalating costs for departments and municipalities to send officers there. So there was a pretty big push this last year, and especially going into the election, around the provincial government putting more funds towards the GIBC, without probably getting into too many details that are probably better discussed in the closed meeting. There was some commitments made by the provincial government before the election, and they seem to be potentially not going to honor them or back out of them. But I would say a fairly united push by all the police departments and the chiefs had a positive outcome on it. And with the budget coming out here recently, the funding that was committed to the GIBC is going to go to the GIBC, and in particular to increase the capacity of the GIBC, tentatively starting in the September class. So the class will be going from where, and they've increased it some in the last couple of years as it is already, because classes were typically 160 officers. They had pushed it up to 192 officers, but that was struggling to train that many at once. The plan is by September to have the classes able to teach 288 officers. So that's a significant increase, but even that's going to be a struggle to meet the need with police in general, the attrition rates and the expansion of all municipal departments pretty much, and then you add Surrey into the mix, who needs several hundred officers just to get up and running over the next couple of years. So it's positive that it's a step forward. It's not quite there yet. There still needs to be some additional capacity built in, and I think a few more of the training specific things that the GI is maybe not meeting for us at present, but again, it's a win. It's a move forward, and it's increased funding for the GIBC. One of the other questions was around that funding piece, that the recruits themselves keep facing increased funding costs or tuition costs to go to the GIBC, as well as the departments or municipalities that have to pay a significant portion of those training costs. So right now we're in the ballpark of $25,000 the department pays for a recruit to go there, and that's likely going to be closer to, and I would say not long before it passes the $30,000 mark. So, you know, the days of, there was some financial savings hiring a recruit and starting because they're at a bit lower wage and they earn the increased wages over, you know, a few years of service till they graduate from a 5th class constable to a 1st class constable. That first year, certainly there's no cost savings for the department because of the tuition costs that you pay. And then on top of it, you have that officer not here physically working in your community for those 6 or 7 months. So it kind of defeats the purpose sometimes of hiring recruits as opposed to hiring exempt officers, which is a whole other challenge. Community safety program, $67 million has been dedicated to 3 years of continuing the site and the Revoy programs. So those are, you know, focused on, in particular, the Revoy focuses on those habitual reoffenders. They're more geared towards habitual or reoffenders with violent crimes. I'm getting to it in a little bit here, but we continue to kind of push that, you know, we need a similar program for the habitual offenders that are on property crimes, you know, because they have a significant impact on communities too. You know, certainly nobody's going to argue that the person's crimes, even like the victim services unit, the person's crimes are still going to be the priority, and that's where, you know, the most focus and tools the police need to deal with those remain at the top of the list. But, you know, I don't think we can discount the impact that property crimes have on people, and in particular, a couple of offenders that continue to probably cause 70 to 80% of the damage in the property crimes in the community, and often re-victimize the same people over again a couple of months later. So I think that adds a bigger piece of urgency, I guess, around having the provincial government and the justice system put more of a focus on those issues. Community safety and targeted enforcement programs, the pilot that will target robbery, shoplifting, and other property crimes is part of this program. So it's again, it's starting to percolate to the top, the focus on property crimes, and it says providing police with tools to tackle street disorder and support safer downtowns and commercial areas in communities throughout BC. So I don't have a lot of details on specifically how that's going to work, because it's just got the funding approved now. So that should be coming out in you know, over the next couple of months, I hope. But we'll certainly be alive to what either funding programs, tools, support services that might be available to Nelson to focus on some of these areas. Victim support, there was $15 million additional dollars funded over 3 years to support assistance for victims, family members, and witnesses. Again, that's been a big push of whatever province I've worked in, that the justice system doesn't do enough to support the victims and witnesses, especially when it comes to having that support for them and what they need to actually feel comfortable of coming to court and testifying. That's often one of the biggest challenges, is that it seems like, you know, all of the attention and focus goes towards the accused and making sure that they have proper defense and support, and maybe if they need treatment and whatever, and the victims are often forgot about, the victims and the witnesses. So I'm glad to see that there's finally at least a recognition and some money going towards beefing up those programs and the services available. Sort of related to all this, while I was in Victoria, I had a chance to have a one-on-one meeting with the new public safety minister, whose name is Gary Begg. I identified kind of the main, it was only a 50-minute meeting, so it wasn't a lot of time to discuss things, but I tried to identify the biggest priorities that face Nelson. And again, the biggest one for us right now is the chronic repeat offenders, and in particular around the property crimes issues. And with, you know, coupled with that ongoing issue of not being able to get people held in custody when hold bail hearings. And really stress the fact that, the police aren't advocating that everybody that commits a crime needs to be held in custody. And I think that's, sometimes what we're saying isn't taken with the weight it should be, because the opinion is the police just want to keep everybody in jail. And that's not the case. Like, I think that's, we've demonstrated that there's a lot of other avenues that we like to go down prior to having to, really almost demand that somebody be held in custody. But there are cases, and there are specific cases in this community that are a small number of people that cause a large amount of harm to the community that need to be held in custody, and they need to be removed from a situation where, the continuation of offenses and the harm committed is happening, but also the fact that there is some concern that, people are getting to the point where they're going to take matters into their own hands. And, somewhat for the protection of those individuals too, they need to be processed accordingly. And whether that includes that involuntary treatment for addictions, the issues around homelessness and being part of the vulnerable population through either mental health or addictions issues. Those things need to be addressed. Like, just again, having a token bail hearing and kicking the person back out of the community to commit further offenses doesn't do well for the community. It doesn't do well for the victims, and it definitely doesn't do well for the offender either. So those were kind of my two main things that I stressed to the minister, that they really needed to start taking that into account. He had also said that he'd spoken with Brittany Anderson before that, and she raised a number of the same issues. So I feel like we're kind of in that place right now where we had the meeting at the City Hall today around the homelessness, vulnerable population, those ongoing issues too. And just speaking with Kevin and Chris, that they had similar discussions with different people while they were in Victoria last week. So, I think we're kind of at that point in history where, like, I would say, like we've never been before, where the opportunity is there, and there's that same message coming from multiple sources where it's never come from before, to say that this is a serious problem that needs addressed. So again, we haven't had any commitment or specific changes come into play yet, but I think the environment, and with the provincial governments just barely squeaking into power again, I think they're listening to the complaints of the communities and the general public on these matters are important and need to be addressed accordingly. I just also raised some issues around funding for police, programs that support police, and issues that the Nelson department being geographically isolated from the resources and the supports that a lot of the other municipal departments get. I think it was a good meeting. Like, he definitely seemed like he was engaged and interested, and interested in hearing about the department and some of the unique environment that we operate within. So again, more to come on that, but positive first meeting. And I think, it's good he took the time to actually listen and hear what challenges we face, even though a lot of them are challenges that every department and every community face. Myself, Director Devin Caron, Barb Vincent attended a luncheon with a representative from the 2S LGBTQ plus community, just to work on building bridges and try and come up with ways that we can work better together and move things forward. I think it was a good productive meeting. Myself and Inspector Jukes attended the Neighborhood Network meeting about roughly 2 weeks ago, and took part in very productive discussions about many of the issues and challenges in the community, challenges the police face and what they actually have the authority to do and what we can't do, as well as potential solutions for moving the needle forward on what are essentially health, addictions, and social issues. So I think, I took some of that sentiment from that meeting to my meeting with the minister as well. So I think it was a good pre-meeting and pre-discussion. And, I honestly think the group that attended and was part of those discussions was positive and open to just wanting some information and to understand, why you know, why certain things maybe happen and why the police can deal with some things, and maybe some ideas as to, you know, what some of the other solutions or avenues are for people to look at dealing with some of the issues that the community is facing. Numerous members of the department, including management, attended and participated in the Polar Plunge this past weekend, which is in support of the Special Olympics. We had a great turnout again this year, as we always do, and the water was cold again this year, as it always is.
At least it wasn't 2 weeks before this.
Yeah. Well, you know, the funny thing is sometimes when it's super cold, the water doesn't feel as cold when you go in, but when it's nice and you go into that, although it was nicer getting out this year because it wasn't quite as freezing. I completed the Watson Police Board governance training before I went to BCACP, and the department's EDI advisory committee meets tomorrow for some planning sessions on how the committee can best be utilized to support the departments, some of our initiatives, to have productive and effective initiatives, and identify and address issues within the community. So I know several people in the room are part of that, and I don't know if you want to comment on any of that specifically, but
I think I'll probably have more to say next month.
Yeah.
Tomorrow's meeting.
that's it.
Any questions for the chief? Steve?
Yeah, I'm wondering if you could specify what we would like to see from a bail reform perspective or dealing with habitual offenders, because, I mean, criminal law would be federal, obviously a provincially appointed judges and Crown. So is this more of a policy type of decision by government that we're looking for? Or are we looking for something other than that? If you could just help me with the actual ask.
Yeah, and I have to admit that sometimes it's a bit of a quagmire of the chicken and egg kind of thing, where who sets what, and I, you know, in defense of sometimes what the ministries set as laws, or, you know, the desk book for prosecutors and stuff of what, you know, what circumstances you push to hold people, and same with the bail hubs that fall under provincial jurisdiction. And then unfortunately, sometimes then, you know, the higher courts, when appeals come in on various things, now set precedent that in theory supersede whatever the provincial government put as this is the policy and this is the expectation, and then the court makes a ruling on it that, you know, it's either unconstitutional or whatever they feel. So, you know, it's kind of this never-ending tug of war back and forth that, you know, essentially it comes down to the fact now that the Attorney General or the Justice Department would have to come up with some kind of legislation to basically dictate these are the parameters, or some kind of scoring matrix. I don't know what the best way to do it would be, but some kind of criteria where, you know, in these circumstances, the expectation is that this person should be held in custody, and, you know, they have to be careful because they have to still leave that independence and decision making to the individual justice of the peace or the judges to weigh out, mitigate all the factors that they feel need to be taken into consideration. But, you know, it's like that old analogy of the pendulum just has kept swinging, where there just seems to be the default to let people out, and then all these things that mitigate is even more reason to let them out. And we've lost sight of the fact that, you know, there's the primary and tertiary grounds for holding somebody in custody, and for the primary grounds, we use that acronym RICE. So it's repeat. Are they going to repeat the offense or offenses? I would say could pretty easily say that that's the case in some of these people. You know, identity is another issue to hold somebody in custody. It doesn't come up too often for us, but it comes up sometimes. Court, C's for court, so court appearances, whether or not they're going to attend court. We have, you know, several individuals that routinely miss court dates, so that's a factor. And then E is for evidence. So if you've arrested somebody and you're, you know, still conducting an investigation, releasing them, they may allow them to tamper with destroy or hide evidence from the police. So those are the things. But I would say, quite routinely, we've got two of the primary grounds to hold somebody in custody, and often other tertiary grounds to hold somebody in custody. And it just seems like we've lost sight of that those are the grounds to hold people in custody. So again, does the province have to put in new legislation to reemphasize that somehow and say, again, X number of offenses or the scoring matrix of offenses that either individually or in totality add up to whatever score they might rate them as, that would be in the direction of the Attorney General's office to hold them in custody, or Solicitor General's office, Attorney General's office.
Yeah, I think it's really complicated, right? Because you have federal jurisdiction over criminal law, generally speaking. You
Yes.
have provincial jurisdiction for some aspects of things, and they definitely can obviously create policies and guidance and all that. But the judge at the end of the day is being driven largely by case law. And, and so I think I just want to, I guess when we are advocating understanding sort of where we can push the boundaries of like what practically are we looking for, and also knowing that there's a federal aspect to this. Like, I don't know who deals with that in terms of the like police associations or whatever, but to me it's like a two-pronged advocacy approach where you're advocating for what the provincial government can do, but also advocating for anything federally that could be brought in. Anyways, I'm just wondering if there is also that two-pronged, and it's just because from my perspective, there probably are limitations in terms of like what we think we can get out of this versus what actually people can do.
Yeah, and it's, again, you kind of hit the nail on the head. The problem is it is very, there's a lot of overlap of stuff, and it's a bit of a quagmire as to who ultimately is responsible for it. And I think sometimes that's why, and I don't want to say anybody's getting away with anything, but they also are able to skirt well, it's not my responsibility, and it's the courts that make these decisions. Well, the politicians make the laws, and yes, the laws are federal in nature, but the justice system is more or less facilitated provincially.
Yes.
And in theory, a ruling and a precedent set in another province doesn't, in theory, directly impact a decision in BC, for example, but the lawyers will bring that into consideration for the justice or judge making a decision to say that whatever case in Ontario, and they'll use a lot of the same grounds and arguments and stuff trying to get it now to be a precedent-setting case in this province. So everything is separated, but at the same time everything bleeds into everything else, and it's where to start. And I think ultimately the bottom line is the only one who can initiate a change is the provincial government. So I think that's the effective starting point for it. Now there's a whole other list of things that need to line up, and then I guess you still have to be prepared that defense lawyers are still going to make the argument that whatever legislation is not fair for X, Y, or Z reason, or my client doesn't fit into that category for X, Y, or Z, and then slowly the court cases set new precedents that chip away at the effectiveness of legislation. So
Yeah, I just like from a board perspective, I definitely hear you. I'm just saying that we need to manage our expectations, and we need to just ask ourselves whether whatever resolutions we're putting forward, like, are we using the right forums on all the forums that we should be using in terms of trying to advocate? That's really at the end of the day what
I think resolution, sometimes we know that nothing's going to happen, but you're giving that message, then, right? Like over time, sometimes those resolutions take years, but some change does happen.
But again, I think like right now that same message coming from multiple sources, and I think that we're seeing that bit of that seismic shift where, and I don't want to comment on specific people and what they're saying, so I won't, but just there's people now that this wasn't a priority for, or maybe lobbying more on the side of the lenience injustice piece that are now recognizing that that's not working, or this is having a detrimental effect on communities where their leaders or politicians in and are now speaking up as well, including, you know, the managerial or permanent staff of, you know, different towns, the associations of police are speaking up. The hospitals are starting to, you know, because they deal a lot with, you know, the same clients that police are bringing in and stuff. And, you know, it's having a drain on all kinds of provincial and municipal services. It's having a negative impact on the citizens of those communities and the feeling of safety and that. And I think, you know, again, not to beleaguer the point, but I just think that all of these messages are percolating up from so many different sources right now that I think if we're ever going to affect the change, it's now. So I just think just whatever avenue you have, I think just keep sending that same message out.
That's the human rights issue too, right? The balance.
Yeah,
It's basic human right.
but it's back to the rights of one person don't outweigh the rights of everybody else in the community. And I think that, you know, for a while, it seems like there was the opposite, where the rights of the individual had to be the priority. And you know, people are saying, okay, enough's enough. Like, what about everybody else in the community that's suffering? So maybe some rights need to be brought back a little bit.
But Jim?
Yeah, without, you know, we've been talking about this for a while, but like, it seems to me, we're not police officers, and so we can point out what the issues are that we have with the current situation, and without getting into the specifics of what you folks deal with all the time, it's more like saying, you know, this outcome consistently happening is not what we want to see in our communities, and we want something different, you know, whether it's that Rice principle or whatever, right? Without getting the board mired down in the language of, we want this specifically, we want, you know, this isn't working and this is the outcome we want. You guys figure out the
How to.
mechanism of how, right? I mean, that sound reasonable? I don't know. It's not necessarily a two-pronged approach, but it is a piece with a group that we have coming up in the near future, right? So, yeah, if there's something should be done federally, we can repeat.
Done.
I'm done.
Report?
Yes.
If there are no more questions, can we pass a motion to accept the chief's report as presented? Eric? Devin? All in favor? Okay. All right, director's reports. Canadian Association of Police Governance, do you want me to speak to that?
Yeah, really what I just like to know is how many people want to attend, and then I can kind of check the budget and see how many can afford to.
Right, so this is the Canadian Association for Police Governance, so it's a federal organization, right? And 1 year they have it in the West Coast and then in the East. And when it's in the East, it's too expensive for everybody to go. But the next one is in August and it's in Victoria, so.
Yeah, I might.
And I want to also, because I'm on the BC Association of Police Boards, we discussed this meeting coming up. And at the moment, there's one BC rep. But apparently at this meeting, they're going to recommend that there be 2 BC reps on the board. So just, you know, so if you're going to be there, just to think about that, because they don't meet that often, and it's a really good organization, but it's heavy on the, you know, Ontario-based stuff, and so it's and then, you know, we say that our needs are not being met, but then we also don't step up. So if we're not at the table, then our issues don't get raised, right? Like, so it's something to think about, whether you want to be there or not, because this Mihaela Hayes, who is the BC rep at the moment, she's really good. Like, she brings all her reports back, and so that's how I knew that this was happening. That, you know, at the August meeting, that they're going to be looking for another BC rep like her. I think she'll continue. Yeah, probably interested, and she's great. She brings everything back But there's a room for another person. Because in the past, when we came on, when Jane and I came on, it was M. McVie who was there, but he had been there from the very beginning. And like, we didn't really benefit, we didn't hear much other than, superficial stuff. So if there's lots of training that they provide, and they're also talking about training board members. And so it's going to be like, we think Watson is great, like, and it's more BC geared, but they also want to do a similar thing for board members. But in Ontario, they have, their boards are different than ours, So again, it would be nice to have a BC presence. That's it for me in that that regard. So yeah, and so Devin and Christine are planning to go.
Well, maybe.
Maybe, yeah. Just a
Anyone
heads up.
else?
What's the
Expressing
deadline?
interest?
I will check for you.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, Lena and I are finished our terms.
We are
on the
done,
board in
otherwise
July.
we'd be going.
Otherwise, we would probably, but-
I've got a lot to do. Because we're expecting on the 12th, so.
Another.
That Lena knows. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
I wondered how.
You know what?
This is
Police
being
board meetings
recorded.
twice a month.
I had to wait till my wife told me that.
I know, I did think about you. I did ask her, well, how does Eric feel about
Oh, I would go, but I'm not allowed to. That's fair.
Yeah. Okay, can we move on to the next? Are you going to speak to this
Yeah.
next topic? Okay,
Well,
over to you.
feel free if anyone else
Yeah,
would like to,
this
but I'm
is-
the one who sent
It
this.
relates to the package in the correspondence and information session, okay. Go ahead, Jane.
Yeah, so this was a news item last week, I believe, a couple of weeks ago, where the court has awarded $380,000 Pride organization and drag performers in Northwestern Ontario in a defamation suit. And why I wanted to bring this up was because when we had drag story time here, there were some issues with people who were opposed to that happening. Because of that, the library was essentially afraid to hold the drag story time, so it was done elsewhere. I know that there was some sort of investigation. I don't know if that's too strong of a word, but there was certainly a looking into it. I remember Deputy Chief Saini reporting back to us as a board on the outcome of them looking into if the information that was or the people who were against having drag story time, if what they said and what they wrote would meet any bar of anything like defamation or hate crimes or anything like that, and we were told that it didn't. And I just wanted to raise that as, does this change the bar for things? How will the NPD use it? This kind of an outcome of a case, how will they use it when they're determining if they're if they're looking at investigating a group who is opposed to drag story time or any LGBT, activity. There's certainly an active group here in the region.
I guess the short answer would be, I don't feel like this really affects us directly. This is a civil outcome. So, the bar for criminal, it would still be the same
Be higher.
standard it is. And we would consult with the Crown to determine whether or not, in their opinion, because ultimately we collect all the information and take it to the Crown for review, and they determine whether or not they feel it meets the threshold for a criminal charge. And at that point, either they determine that it meets the threshold and the criminal charges are approved, and then we go through the criminal process. If they don't feel it's meeting the criminal level, we would not lay charges. There's a few other sort of avenues open to us, but generally that would be more or less the end of that specific event. That doesn't mean we don't continue to monitor it, and if there's multiple other events or they escalate, that we revisit again whether now has it met the criminal charge. But again, this is, to me, this is now, and it's on the balance of probability civil level. So I think that doesn't change the department's approach or what happened in the previous investigations.
And so who decides, like, are people who are negatively affected by, the ability not to hold an event at the public library, how do they ever get to know that they can file a civil suit? Like, is that something the police would say to them? Oh, well, this doesn't meet the criminal threshold, but you could do, this is an avenue open to you? Or I'm just curious because.
It would depend a bit on the individual officers. We'd certainly, I know in cases I've been involved in at times, we've suggested that people look at, this doesn't meet the threshold for criminal, but there's certainly some level of defamation or threats or intimidation or something that, you may want to explore the civil aspect too. But beyond that, we just have to be very careful not to give legal advice on the civil side of the house, other than saying, maybe go talk to a lawyer and explore whether or not this,
Right.
if they feel that meets the civil threshold of
Right.
going to court.
There used to be an advocacy center that people could go to for this kind of stuff,
Oh, yeah.
right? I don't know. I don't think it exists anymore.
Advocacy
Okay, thanks.
So-
there at Nelson Cares.
Yeah, advocacy. Yeah, that's probably where I get that kind of advice.
Okay, thanks.
All right, new business. Shiloh, you added these, so help me.
The CAPG was me. I just, was policing and supporting the unhoused in Edmonton, how governments are working together to build meaningful connections. I just thought I'd ask Shiloh, if there's any interest from anybody else, before
Yeah.
before we ask to pay for register for it. So it just seems really timely.
So are people aware, the CAPG is having a live webinar
Yeah.
on the unhoused?
Yeah, they do lots of stuff, and this one
Yeah,
just
their
seems.
trainings are really, really good.
Yeah.
I've taken several of them.
This is like 9
Actually,
o'clock
we
next
get a recording of
Thursday.
this afterwards, don't we?
Typically, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would like to hear this one, but on the 13th, I know that I can't be.
Yeah.
Live.
So
Same.
are you signing up for it then?
Well, I just, because it costs, right? So that's
Yeah,
why
you have to
we're-
let-
So, I'm interested, and I just thought, maybe I'd throw it out there and see if anybody else would be.
I'd be
No, I would
interested
listen
in
to it
the
afterwards. I
recording.
just on the 13th, I'm in Vancouver next week.
Awesome. Thanks, Charlotte.
I'm interested in the recording, but I
Yeah.
can't attend live
So
too.
if one person attends, the rest of
Yeah.
us can get a recording, so that's great.
Okay,
Yeah.
Good.
Way to do it
Yeah,
then.
please do.
So Shiloh, you'll send out the recording afterwards or
Yes,
someone will? Thank you.
That's great. Okay.
Awesome. You'll send me a link.
Thanks, Debbie.
You'll send me the link. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Just seems like.
Yeah, I wondered because, I had made a note about the webinar.
Yeah.
Forgot to mention it earlier. Yeah, okay. Then the next one is the Nelson Police Association. Again, what are the meeting
They
dates?
would like to meet with you,
Okay.
and those are their 2 meeting dates they have upcoming. They're
Okay.
Tuesday nights,
Okay.
7 o'clock. And so just
So
which
is this
which
like
date would
an
be the best?
open invitation, like for us to attend one of their meetings, or are they wanting something specific from us? Do you know?
This is the strategic plan
Oh,
role
that's it.
presentation.
Okay,
I mean, I think there'll be other things, but that was the initial
perfect.
um, reason why we were trying to set up a meeting to go and do that,
All right.
that piece.
So do you have a preference for the dates? Like does one work better than the other?
Are we Delta?
We're not there, May 6th. We're away. We're
We're away.
flying out that morning
All right, so we have a choice.
to Vancouver for the VCAPB in May. Yeah.
April Fool's Day is the other one. so.
Yeah,
I'm not here at the April date, so, but I don't need to necessarily be.
yeah, it's like whoever's here, right?
Be like typically a couple people will go.
Yeah,
Yeah, so people around April.
I can do April. So it's, who's present, you're presenting the strategic plan?
Or
The
The
board.
board.
So I met with the chief, and so we had a preliminary discussion, and my intention originally was to
To go with, to go
well,
to that meeting.
to be
Oh, okay.
present, but
Yes.
yeah, I cannot do April 1st, so.
And May, you're,
Well, I'm
Maybe
not,
we
I'm not flying out, but again,
Yeah.
it depends who we want in attendance. It would be good to have more than just me
Just
there.
you, yeah.
Like, it would be actually good to have someone who worked on the strategic plan,
Yeah.
because I'm just gonna be like, I know as much as you guys do.
right,
I think the June date would be June 3rd.
yeah.
That's
Probably better.
works better.
That sounds more realistic.
Yeah, but where more people can attend.
Yeah.
In June.
June 3rd?
Yeah.
I'll send out an invite for all of you.
And then I'd be happy to help with the presentation if it's in June. There's no way in April, but in June I can absolutely help.
Like, you were there, right, Devin, for the planning, and Jane and I, we were there for the
Yeah.
planning of the strategic plan, like, in order to present it. Yeah, so that's, we can do a team thing. Eric was there too, right?
Yeah, I'm not here in June though.
No, in June, no? Oh, yeah, right.
I'm just.
You said you're going to be busy. Is that what you said?
No,
No, it's just done it.
I'm in Japan, so.
Oh, you're
Oh,
actually,
yeah.
you're away from the country.
Tuesdays, all the Tuesdays selected are all, city council nights, so. I won't
So
be in any of
who's
them.
going to be here in June, like, just so we know, other than Eric, we're all going to be here?
Mhm.
Perfect. Great, good.
Matt is waffling over there.
And what's the date in June?
So- oh, sorry.
7.
The 7th.
Oh, I thought you said the 3rd.
I totally heard the
So June,
3rd too.
June 3rd, sorry, I'm reading the wrong number.
June 3rd, and
Sorry, yeah.
what time do they
7 o'clock.
usually?
7
Okay,
PM.
7.
And then, like, we can talk later about how we're going to present it, right? So
Yeah,
we don't all just show up with just the pamphlet.
no, totally. No, I'd be happy to work on a presentation for June. I just don't have time between now and April 1st to.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Sounds good.
All right. Can I adjourn the meeting? I need a motion to adjourn the meeting. Devin,
Second.
Matt, all in favor? All right. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, you got it.
Check the newspaper tomorrow, please.
Oh.
It's a good thing, it's not a scandal.
Thanks, Tyler. I'm just,
Anybody need a bio break before we?